You are about to receive messages that may be harmful to your mental state. Your sense of reality will be questioned. Your view on things will be altered. You are now part of the Meta. The Meta controls everything. The Meta determines what will and will not happen. You are watching The Meta Show.
And we're live.
Yes.
Good evening. Actually, I guess good afternoon, everyone, or evening if you're here. We have a special episode of the Meta Show today. As everybody who is playing EVE right now is aware, if they're anywhere near HiSec, it is the 6th edition of Burn Jita, which is our fun little holiday where Goonswarm and the Imperium visits Jita and torches everything that moves. We've been doing this since the first Burn Jita back in 2012. And it's always a party for us, maybe not for anybody else who's not on our side. But today, we are going to be talking to Joe Painter, who is the director in charge of the Ministry of Love. Ministry of Love, of course, is responsible for ganking in HiSec for the Imperium, as well as organizing, creating, and making happen Burn Jita every year, consistently going all the way back to 2012, our first one. So I'm delighted to have Joe here as a guest, and we're going to be talking primarily about Burn Jita. Yeah. And let's do some shout outs here. We have Sally Solomon for 32 months. Excellent. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Viper, 187. Who else did I miss back here? I think that's it for now. Cool.
Yeah, we had a
Vital Praetorian, too.
We had a lot of
8
questions
gift subs. Jesus Christ.
yesterday. We were, that means there's going to be 8 people subbing in about 2 seconds. There it goes. Oh, it hasn't done it yet. It's about 2 in a second, though.
Anywho, Burn Jita showcases everything good about EVE, as Herfy points out with his resub, and that is absolutely the case.
Yeah,
Burn Jita is hilarious.
A lot of questions yesterday. We were streaming this yesterday about what is Burn Jita. I believe Burn Jita started 2012 as like a protest of HiSec. It's like get all the 0-0 people together
Burn Jita,
and go burn the place.
No.
See,
I mean,
even I don't.
Burn Jita. So this is a weird thing that is a problem, is that people forget history. Burn Jita started in 2012. It had been something that we had been thinking about doing in the Goonswarm Directorate because we thought it would be fun, and we had spun up Mini Love as like a thing that could exist. And originally it was a bounty hunting organization back in the day, which would chase around unpersons. And Warakini really showed us a lot of things that we could do with HiSec ganking. And the timing of the first Burn Jita was such that just after a certain someone who went to FanFest and wore a wizard hat got unbanned on the day that I was unbanned back in 2012, that was when we launched the first Burn Jita, which was sort of a reminder that Goonswarm wasn't going anywhere and that everybody else in the galaxy was trapped here with us and not vice versa. So that was how the first one started.
We just had that total, by the way, went up to 13 gifted subs from 8. He just added 5 more. So now those are starting to come through right now.
Hell yeah.
Fuck yeah. So yeah, our guest today is the current, I think he's the current leader or the current
Yep, he is the boss of Mini Love.
Mini Love, yeah.
Joe Painter.
How's it going, Joe?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Oh, wonderful.
Chillin' and billin'. So tell us about this year's Burn and tell us what it's like being in charge of Mini Love. You just introduce yourself to everybody who's watching.
Okay, I'm Joe Painter. Burn Jita is fun. It's also terrible. I FC'd for 14 hours yesterday consecutively.
Oh, wow.
And I've been FCing since, I don't know, how many, what's that, 7 a.m. It's 3 p.m. now, so...
That is
a lot of hours today so far.
So if you fall asleep in the middle of the Meta Show, I'm gonna understand. I'm not gonna be offended. That is something that a lot of people don't realize about Burn Jita, is that it's something that requires months of preparation that Mini Love puts in, very specialist skill set, and on top of that, once it actually happens, it's like a 72-hour Adderall and Ritalin and God only knows what else fueled burn, right? Like, these guys might as well just be on meth. They don't sleep. They just gank as much as they can, as fast as they can. What was the how many Burn Jitas have you participated in, Joe? Not necessarily as a director, but how many have you been in?
Which was Burn of Mar, I think, was my first one, and then it was Burn War Keeney, Burn G to 4, Burn G to 5. Now we're at Burn G to 6.
For the kids, yep. So, what was the longest time that you have consecutively FC'd during one of these things?
Consecutively FC'd? That might have been yesterday, actually, but consecutively played was definitely last year. I played for like 22 hours straight or something.
That is ridiculous. But fantastic as well. I admire the dedication. Did somebody send you a pizza yesterday?
Yeah. One of the members of the fleet did send me a pizza.
That's awesome.
So that was great.
That's fantastic. Yeah, there was a link to that in Illuminati, and it had Matani. The Matani sends his regards in the background. I'm like, I didn't know my regards had pizza affiliated with it. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm going to press a little button here, and we'll jump into it. So, top story today, of course, is Burn And right away, the first thing I have to say is the corporation name is absolutely amazing. I'm going to link it here in Fleet. For those of you that don't know about it, the corporation name is Delve Waters and Rorqual Broadcasters Anonymous. The ticker is DBRB, and the CEO is the Big Red Bot.
That's adorable.
Who came up with such a great thing?
So I came up with the idea to do some like bot-related theme because our Eve is all butthurt about us seeming to constantly be botting or some reason. So then Sugar came up with the corp name, and I thought that was so we're embracing our botting lifestyle.
There's usually a theme. There's a theme for Burn Jitas, and a while back when we were trolling with the whole Care for Kids fake charity stuff that was part of our enemies in the casino war, part of their like little dark money bullshit, set up the whole Care for Kids thing. We named Burn Jita 4. It was Burn Jita for the kids because, of course, everybody's doing things for cancer-ridden children in EVE Online. Which I think nicely highlighted how utter bullshit the whole Care for Kids thing was.
Oh yeah, it was all lies. But what was great,
and the theme this year, of course, is the accusations of botting.
Yeah, the acronyms though of that were so great because we talked about it on the show, and I think you were rolling for a good 5 minutes because the acronym was BJ for the kids.
Vegeta for the kids. That's very good cause.
But
tell us about the botting gimmick theme. Are we beep booping and local? What's going on? How are the boys rolling with it?
Good. AG has already been confused. They think it's just one person multi-boxing all the characters. So I thought that was kind of amusing.
Yeah, there was a Reddit thread that had like 300 comments yesterday about there's this one guy who's spamming 3 times messages on 800 accounts. What are we going to do about this? CCP, please.
He needs to be banned. Bots are a terrible plight in HiSec now.
So one of the things I'm curious about, for people who have not been on Burn Jita before, and there's going to be a bunch of people who have watched this, one of the tragedies that we have within the Imperium, not so much anymore, but there have been times where within the Coalition there will be certain corporations will have corp level regulations where they won't allow their members to participate in all the fun and the reindeer games that we get up to every year. A good friend of mine from one of the Madison local EVE meets is finally this year is his first chance to get to do some Jita burning. What's different year over year? Have the tactics changed this year compared to last year? And can you just walk us through what it is like to go on a gank? Because people think we're just ganking freighters, but there's a lot more that goes into the process of arranging one of these things. Tell us about that.
The process hasn't really changed, at least not recently, the past few years. It's pretty standard. You have scouts, they find the freighters. Subsequently, a bumper will bump it. When our fleet's ready, fleet will undock, go to an instant dock, perch, then go down to the freighter. So it's a pretty standard process, so we get into a pretty good rhythm once we have targets. An issue so far this year, at least it was like 30, 45 minutes ago, I'm not sure about now, is we just had no freighters coming through. So targets were very limited.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because we noticed there was a bunch of us trying to kill Wardex, and we saw, I think, 1 freighter in 2 hours pass through perimeter. And so what happens when there is no freighters? Do you guys target like shiny fits Tengus that are 10 billion? Like, what do you guys do in the meantime?
I went to mining belts and I just killed mining orcas, just like 2 jumps over.
That's do you think that there's been less freighters to kill recently because of people being like on the first day of Burnjita yesterday? I was checking in on it, and there were 3 full fleets out there doing those ganks, which is huge. Are we running out of targets temporarily? Somebody just told Dovahjeen and just said that 4 targets just died. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, if people want to follow, there's a link right here.
The question is, are we ganking them so quickly because we've had so many fleets out? Because a lot of times you don't have 3 full fleets for Burnjita. That is pretty hilarious and awesome. Are we just cycling through the targets very rapidly? Are people sending less in?
It's a mix of both. So we're killing targets fast, and also there's just not many moving in the first place. So it compounds when you have big fleets and not a lot of targets because you're killing more targets. So you just can't really keep up.
That's I think that's a good thing from a certain perspective. One of the challenges that we had several Burnjitas ago was that we would have the bumpers basically keeping freighters in like a holding pattern, right? Like we were not able to kill them as quickly as they were coming up. So you'd have sometimes a freighter would basically just be kept there in space for a while, like an air traffic control of, and yeah,
that was happening yesterday. I watched that yesterday. We streamed it here. The big thing I saw, and some questions I have, is I saw you guys do something yesterday, and I'm curious if this is a way to deal with Concord. Is that you landed on grid with a target, but then you warped somewhere. You sat there for a second, and you warped somewhere else. You sat there for a second, and you bounced like the same, like 4 or 5 different places. Then you went and killed the target while on grid at the same time. Is that to draw Concord away from where the target would be?
No, for that, it's usually we're getting a warp in set up, so we're getting a frigate or something on the freighter for us to warp down and kill it. And in the meantime, a lot of us are negative sex status, so faction police will kill us very fast in Jita. So you essentially have to be constantly moving, otherwise you will die.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, because there was a lot of questions like, oh, wow, they're bouncing around like crazy. I wonder what cool tactic they'll come up with. But
yeah, so you have to essentially just keep bouncing, otherwise if you sit for like 5 seconds, you get pointed and killed.
The popo comes after you.
Here's a link, by the way, everyone. If you're wanting to keep up with daily activities, some guy on Reddit went and compiled the entire first day's kill mail total of every ship that died in Burnjita, and then posted the numbers. It says here 272 billion in the first 24 hours. Someone just told me earlier we had just passed 300 billion just a little bit ago. And then one question I have is, what was it like, for those that don't know, apparently an arc fit properly is really, really hard to gank. What was it like when you killed that thing with the 400 dudes? How did you feel?
It's a fun time. It's definitely something you don't get to do other than Burnjitas, essentially. It's actually surprising. We seem to kill an arc like that every year. They just think they're unkillable. Because essentially they are, except in a situation where it's Burnjita, because they have like 1 million EHP. So it takes a lot to kill it in 5 seconds.
For those wondering, there's the link right there. It's 3 adaptive passive invulns, or an nanoplating, sorry, attached to an arc. And he got hit by 400 plus dudes and just vaporized.
I think it is kind of curious because one of the things that was a challenge year over year for us during Burnjita is back in the day when we started the first one, every year we would Burnjita. The first time, CCP actually posted an announcement on their launcher. That was back in the day when John Turbofield was still with the company. And CCP Diagorus, I think was his name. And so there's a launcher warning because they were basically afraid that so many puppies would get in there because this had never happened before. And then each year you would see more screaming to the point that people would be asking for freighters to get buffed. So back in the day, the tactics that were used for Burnjita were very different because between burns year over year, CCP would implement new changes. Back in the day, freighters didn't have any low slots, right? So you could just gank a freighter. And now one of the things that I am very proud to see Minilove pull off every year is the level of organization and also the tactical adaptation, because essentially there haven't been any changes to ganking mechanics, not because of Pearl Abyss or any sort of CCP conspiracy, but I think that we have just shown that we are going to out-organize and essentially beat any changes that are made to try to prevent high-sec ganking. And it's gotten to the point where they've stopped tweaking the game around that. They're not trying to balance around Burn Jita anymore, which is kind of a delight.
Yeah. A question I have, Joe, is how many ships did you guys fit for this year? Because we're seeing record numbers of people on kill mills, 250, 300, 400 people.
62,000 coursers.
Oh, fucking hell. How long did that take you to fit that? Because I know multi-fitting helps some, but how do you fit 62,000 ships?
It's not bad, especially because you can multi-box, multi-fit.
Yeah.
So, for example, if we do all 25 of my accounts at once, and you can multi-fit 30 ships at once or whatever, so it gets pretty quick.
Why? That's an interesting question here, chat. Which is why coercers? In the past, we've used catalysts for pod ganking. Of course, thrashers used to be de rigueur. I think they still are. Why?
So T1 catalysts have an optimal range of like 1 kilometer versus coursers, which is like 10 kilometers. So, and they do like courses do like very little less damage, it's like 15% or something at optimal. So in reality, you're getting just a lot more damage applied with a courser versus a catalyst. Also, warp-ins don't need to be perfect and all that, and it just makes life a lot easier.
You don't have to say nearly. You don't have to scream approach the freighter nearly as often, or as
or if like
cycle through.
Yeah, or if someone taps the freighter and it moves a little bit, like the warp-in isn't super fucked. So
okay,
that makes sense. So, what exactly is it that? Have you seen much screaming in Jita Local? Like, what is the mood in Jita right now? Are the residents taking it in stride? Are they freaking out? Is there panic in the streets? Or have they just been sort of oppressed into a level of learned helplessness that when Burn Jita happens, they just sort of go fetal in the corner and wait for the pain to stop?
Yeah, that's essentially the case. They don't really do all that much. There's not a lot of screaming, but there's also very little resistance. So,
has there been? That's kind of curious because in the past, when we first started doing Burn Jita, there would be a lot of people organizing against it because it's not just Burn Jita. It wasn't like a national holiday or anything like that. It was this evil thing that evil goons were doing because the evil Mittani got banned. And at first, it was affiliated with the Wizard Hat thing for the first year or so, and then after that, it became its own thing. And there would be organized anti-gankers. You would see hostiles from hostile null alliances would war deck us and come at us. Are you seeing any real resistance from anti-gankers this year? Have they just stopped? Like,
I mean, they try, but it's not that significant. Yeah, I mean, I saw like a Horde Harpy fleet yesterday, but they didn't do anything. There was a Slice like interceptor fleet that was following us for a bit, but they didn't do anything. So it's like, it's whatever. It's when you have this many gankers, it's just like there's not all that much you can do because we just outnumber you so hard.
The best thing I saw was an attempt. It was really kind of hilarious. They had 30 Ospreys repping this one guy that we were bumping, and then we warp on grid and gank the guy next to him like 100 kilometers away and then leave, and then they just kind of gave up and left. So it's like things like that make me smile. It's when the people that try to stop the ganking don't succeed and then realize they've just not been able to help at all and then fuck off. But we have a question from one of our wonderful viewers. K-Color asks, the most important question is, what kind of pizza and how was it?
It was pepperoni pizza. It was pretty good. Me and my roommate split it. I was really hungry, so it definitely came in clutch.
Excellent. We do have a question. We are going to be talking about some nullsec news here. Somebody was asking a bit ago whether we're going to be covering the initiative's deployment against NC. So we will be absolutely getting to that. If anybody has other questions about Burn Jita, I'd be delighted to hear them. I am, I'm not going to lie. It's a little disappointing that there's not nearly as much bleeding and screaming, right? Like, one of the things I do genuinely enjoy about EVE is the sandbox environment, which is just a nice way of saying that when you blow somebody up, it's consequential, it matters, and usually you get a bunch of tears from it. I guess kids these days call it salt, but whatever. And if Jita has genuinely been crushed into submission, that's a shame. One of the reasons why we moved it to Amar was also we had a Burn Amarr a few years ago, and that was affiliated with Maximilian Singularity VI, the true emperor, first of his name, and making certain that he was enshrined as the true emperor of Amarr, which he is. But that shook it up a bit, where people in Amarr weren't used to getting hunted for sport, and but
well, here's the thing I gotta know is alpha clones are big this year. Are you seeing how easy? Well, two parts is how easy is it to get an alpha clone ready for Burn Jita, and how good is it that there's alpha clones in the game for this specific purpose?
It's super easy. It's just like Amarr Destroyer 1 and Small Lasers 1.
Oh wow!
So it's not like hard skills.
Yeah.
But even then, alpha clones aren't like a big deal. Like you could definitely just do this with your nullsec main. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, some people were wondering, we had a lot of people in the chat yesterday asking, are these all alpha clones because they all have brand new naming conventions, or do people really use their subscribed characters? And then another question was, is it possible, because we're doing this on Gaming Mumble, for randoms to come along and do this? They see how fun it is, they see how enjoyable it is. How do they get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So at least like the minor bumping channel in the game, I've invited people from. If they're just in there, they can come. I don't care.
What's the channel, so we can tell people?
Oh, well, our current channel is bj6.pub is our public channel. If you want invites to Fleet.
Okay, cool.
But,
yeah, we had a lot of people going, this looks amazing. This looks like a lot of fun. Lots of explosions. I want to go. And they were curious. And I told them they can go on Mumble, but they didn't know how to join Fleet. So that's perfect. That's a great answer.
One of the questions I saw here was, let me scroll up here. It was, what is it? If since Burn Jita has become such an institution, this is something that Without a Plan is asking, would canceling Burn Jita be a bigger protest against CCV's direction for EVE now that it is like a staple of EVE? I don't know. I mean, I think that Burn Jita has become something that people expect. It's like a Station on the Cross. We do it every year. It's a big event that impacts the entire game. I don't think that canceling Burn Jita would make anybody but the Imperium unhappy, right? This is something that's for us, by us, at the expense of everybody else. It's just something that the Ministry of Love works a shitload on, and it wouldn't happen if it wasn't for Many Love, their FCs, and guys like Joe managing the entire thing. So it would be more like spiting ourselves, right? It would be basically saying like, oh, well, we're going to protest you doing something we disagree with by not going on a vacation to the French Riviera, right? Like, oh, we're going to stop having fun. It's not like anybody outside of the Imperium really enjoys Burn Jita. There's lots of tie-dye. People's friends get killed, they get blown up. We're having a great time. I see no reason for us to cancel Burn Jita on account of anybody else.
That's a great way to put it too. It looks like another freighter just died just now. Tie-dye just kicked up in Jita, but I think of that as a perfect way to word that. As goons are on vacation right now, we're having fun. Doesn't mean we're going to stop anytime soon just because you're not able to go on vacation because you can't afford it. Another question I have is cost. A lot of people were saying, hey, you guys do this on such a massive scale. How expensive is it in reality? Does it cost a lot, or is it like you guys recover your costs with like?
Do we even know? I mean,
yeah, that's
Many
the
Love
question.
It's really cheap.
Oh, wow.
Like they're garbage. They're suicide ships,
Right.
And we get loot. Like Many Love has just tons of stuff, which is why there've been dramas in the past
Mini Love
about
shop.
random pubbies trying to steal it. Like Code is basically full of people who have been banned from the Imperium because they're butt blasted and wanted to steal shit. So
Yeah.
other than that, though, no. I mean, it's dirt cheap. It's a fucking rounding area. I mean. Aerith just popped up here in Discord, so maybe he'll be able to sound
timing.
off on that. But from what I understand, like I can't even remember a time that the financial cost of Burn Jita from an Imperium perspective has ever even come up in an Illum meeting. Like it's a rounding error.
No, yeah, it's nothing. Let's assume it's like maybe like $1 million a ship, and if we made 60,000 of them, so like 60 bill. It's like whatever.
Oh yeah, that's
Even the first one, like the very first one, was the most expensive one because we didn't really we didn't know what we were doing. We had a weird business plan, and it was me solo fitting like 14,000 ships, so I stuck with one hull type, and it was probably, too strong, for what we needed to do, and we kind of overkilled it. Even that was like 40 to 50 billion. So nowadays, it's got to be like, 20 billion or less easily.
Do we have a system in place, like when we're ganking these freighters, are we trying to scoop the loot afterwards? Like, do we have a scooper lined up, or?
Yeah, we have loot teams to scoop the freighter loot. Like, we're not getting any of the blue loot from the Corsairs, because fuck that.
Right,
but,
why bother?
Yeah, we're scooping. Yeah, we essentially break even almost every year just based off of loot.
So
we're also doing a Titan giveaway and stuff as well, so it's going to end up costing more.
Hey, Joe, if you want to let people know, there's a Charon on the Undocked named Lenny who has 2 billion in faction cruisers inside him, like 15 VNIs, Aguila.
Yeah.
If you want to kill him, please.
There's a Mercurial bumping it right now, if you notice.
Oh, there is.
They have scouts
Good.
on absolutely everyone everywhere. Like, you can't move in Jita without having, or in any of the surrounding areas without Mini Love being all over.
Normally, I would just.
That's already be bumped.
Yeah, I'm watching these get bumped. There's 2 on the Undock, so I will cover these. Like, I'll bring up the screen if they go to get ganked. You guys can watch them get ganked.
That's excellent. Yeah, if we can get some live Jita coverage.
Well, yeah, I have a live Jita cam running right now. I just didn't know if I should put it on, but I'm going to in a moment. But this is perfect timing because now Aerith's here. For those who don't know, Aerith just got back from Iceland for the CSM summit with everyone. And how was that, Aerith?
It was probably the best summit I've ever been to. Like, I wouldn't say I'm not trying to say from like an NDA information perspective, but just how the relationship with CCP is going, how I feel the company's doing, is the direction of the game, what I would want. So I would say it's been the best summit I've been to where, I'll try to give my feedback, just my personal, because we can't say details, but my personal feeling was there was only one session of the entire summit that was a little drama.
That has been a concern in the player base because we haven't really seen much news or announcements from CCP talking about what's coming next, right? The Alliance tournament was canceled. That ruffled some feathers. Regardless of your views on the Alliance tournament, people were kind of butt blasted about it. There isn't really much that's been posted as like what's coming next from CCP, except for like the 64-bit client. We know that Amsterdam is coming up at the end of March or the late part of March, and can we expect some sort of can you tell us if there is something coming? Does CCP have stuff coming down the pipe that we can be excited about? Because right now there's been really a dearth of announcements of any kind about what's next, other than no FanFest, oops, we fucked up the Harper thing, and no Alliance tournament.
I don't think they're specifically waiting for like Amsterdam or anything. I think we'll see some blogs here in the future about kind of what they want to do this year. But no, I wouldn't be able to say anything, specific, obviously, or even like when. But things don't necessarily have to be controversial or huge game-changing things to be game-changing things, right? Like little changes can have very, very large ramifications when you sit back and you actually think about like the first, second, third order effects. So I'm very excited for what they're going to do in 2019. So I think all the CSM we were very united in our positive feedback pretty much the entire summit.
That's good. That's something to look forward to, then.
We saw a lot of pictures and we saw some broadcasts come out of CCP. So the question we have is, was it more of a relaxed summit this time than maybe in the past? Because the mood from all the discussion points from CCP on social media and from broadcast on Goonjabber, when they stole Nominat's phone one time, seemed really relaxed. How was that?
Yeah, I would definitely say the relationship with CCP, from CSM the institution to CCP as a company, and vice versa, is much more cordial than any time I can remember. Starting with CSM 11, we largely had to rebuild that relationship, rebuild the institution. It was very toxic prior to that. The change in leadership on CCP's side had a huge, effect on their side, and that enabled us to rebuild our side. But I also think the CSM as a whole has learned how to be a unit, right? We have consensus. We talk about ideas before we ever will talk about, to some CCP. Whether it's an idea, usually it's not. It's usually more like a concern area. So the way the CSM really functions for people that think it's like a free vacation or whatever is, we tend to either bring up problem areas or provide feedback on areas that CCP is working on. We don't pitch like individual ideas, or we don't pitch like, what if you did this thing? And the reason is a couple fold. One, there's usually a better way to do something if you know the code, that accomplishes the same goal as what we want. Two, it's easier to avoid self-serving motives when you're not pitching a specific feature. When you're just pointing out an area of concern and CCP goes and collects analytics and does their looking at that area, then they can address it in a fair way to all parties. If you try to pitch a specific feature a certain way, that's when the agendas can kind of intrude upon the CSM as an institution. So we try to avoid that, and it's working really, really well.
That is one of the things that we were criticized for in CSM 6, right? Having a united CSM is key from a lobbying and an advocacy perspective. And when I say a united CSM, I mean actually taking the time separate from CCP to have those who are representing the players decide what issues they want to present as a group away from CCP, as opposed to what we've seen on some other CSMs where you end up basically with a bunch of random pubbies like fighting over each other to see which dev's dick they can try to suck, right? It is much better and much more effective. One of the reasons why CSM 6 was able to get so much done is that when all of NullSec stacked the CSM, we all worked together as a group and were able to present a united front. So that's positive news for the current CSM. I am going to be mildly curious to see if people start criticizing the CSM for doing that, but that actually does make for far better advocacy and relations.
Well, I feel like that's the way the voting goes too, right? You see who the list of people are, and then you get a bunch of the CSM together, kind of like real Congress, and they like, look, we can work with this guy. We'd like this guy to be in there. Let's vote him in. And that tends to happen across all of EVE. And I like it. I like it a lot. But question is there anything non-NDA that you guys discussed at EVE related, or is it all NDA?
Well, I think some of it they just released, I believe they released the changes for alphas while we're at the summit. So that was pretty positive. They released that website, which I know it doesn't have a lot on it yet, but I think it will, which is like
the website that looks like it was made by an intern.
Are you talking about the little thing ones? I thought it looked okay.
Yeah, they say follow the website for to see what we're going to be doing, and then they tell you to follow their Twitter. It's I mean, if they start putting things on there, that's great. I think the biggest issue that we have as a player base, and I've seen this in a number of quarters, is that, and hopefully somebody in CCP might be watching this, is that there has been so little news that is giving people something to look forward to, right? What is CCP having down the pipe? If you've got no FanFest, you've got no Alliance tournament, then what's coming next, right? Are we in a holding pattern? So any kind of announcement from CCP about what they're planning on doing would be looked upon very positively from the player base. Even if people disagree with it, I think we would like to see them getting stuck in and doing stuff rather than just a great silence.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a silence. They're definitely not silent. I think there's going to be some blogs coming that everyone's going to be very happy with. There will always be the re crowd, right? But I don't think that we need to listen to a lot of the people like the Reddit masses, those kind of people, where it tends to be an echo chamber. They don't really think about long-term health very well, or they think very simplistically. But I like what CCP is doing. Again, I can only point to maybe a single session where I thought, man, that session was not great. Not necessarily adversarial, but definitely not productive. But all the other ones I felt like were very productive. And all the CSM did. We would leave each day going, oh man, came in here thinking that would be a little bit of a waste, like maybe half the day. Because, not every session is going to be like something we're all interested in. And there are some sessions that maybe one CSM is interested in at most because they're very dry or banal topics. But, every day we'd end and we'd start having some beers. And before we start the rampage, as Merkelgen calls it, and it would be good. We would then go over, any feedback we might want to give them the next day that we didn't think of. We went into the summit with a platform. We spent months talking about what our platform would be. And so I think when we come in united and we limit our platform to usually 3, but this year was 4 issues, at least CCP can then decide, do they want to pull the analytics and focus on 1 or 2 of those issues and get something done that, helps the player base as a whole. And just so you know how we think about this for players, we try to go. This year, we made a very conscious attempt to spread the issues around. We went with a PvE issue. We went with a PvP issue. We went with EVE-wide issue. And then we went with kind of a second Evoid issue, but more game in universe issue. So we tried to make sure every area got one very important issue that would focus on them, and that was our platform. So, and then in the CSM, I mean, a few years ago, it was like, it would be goons that go to dinner with each other, and then it was Noah would go to dinner with each other, and now we've got to the point where like we're all basically going to dinner, high-end dinners every night, getting sloshed, having nice steaks, smoke-filled backroom deals. It's great. Actually, I'm going to link a picture of it, but my favorite picture, and for those who don't know, my face is actually in this one. I'll link in the channel.
Yeah, your face was on a lot of these. That was one of the questions that came up is why show your face this year?
Well, see, my employees doxed me in the last year. So, like, several of the people that report to me actually know now what's up. And so I'm like,
the secret's out.
The secret's out.
The secret's a little out. Like, I'm not going to, like, blast it out in the, from a megaphone. But, I'm a little more relaxed now. And so it's like, yeah. And if you look at that picture, I think Weasler said, his comment was, if you had to pick, if someone asked you who's most likely to have someone chained up in their basement in that picture, I would be selected every time.
You or Merkel? Oh, that's great. Yeah. No, actually, the judge is the one in that picture that kind of like screams like, "Oh God, please run! Don't."
Well, Judge's picture more screams like, "Hey, get into my van, little boy," whereas mine's more like Mexican mafia. Like,
that's adorable.
Yes, that's great. But yeah, that seemed like again with the whole relaxed environment. Those kind of pictures that we saw, especially on Facebook, seemed like the ones that were really showcasing how wonderful it was. Also, while you were gone, they released the MER. Didn't notice anything super big out of that, but did you see anything from the MER for
production? Yeah, production was really strong. That's a lot of that's probably me actually, because I shifted my lines to the full, raw to NT2 chain. So, and now other goons are as well. So you're going to see that more of that captured in the production number for Dell. So that's good.
Okay. So this is actually perfect timing as we roll through the segments because Darkshines, the architect of the Initiative Goes Against Tribute campaign, has graced us with his presence here in the last 20 minutes of the show. So, hi, Darkshines. How's it going?
Hey, not too bad.
So, for those wondering, this week Initiative has deployed to Tribute. There was a lot of questions about where Initiative would go. They posted a video with a lot of question marks on regions like, hey, are they going to go to Delve? Are they going to go against Test? Are they going to go settle old scores? But they settled on Tribute. And I'm told you guys took Titans and Supers. What? Are you guys just like thinking, oh, we got this? Or what was the deal with the Titans and Supers going up north?
Actually, I'll just preface it with it. It's not just me who's been planning it. It's the kind of full team, Bliss, Panda, and Bonga as well. We were set to deploy on a Tuesday evening, which is when we all kind of had some free time. And we got some intel of a triumvirate fort online at the exact time that we were set to do our first deployment fleet. So we weren't quite sure if it was a coincidence or if it was planned or whatever, because there wasn't any other forts in Pureblind at the time. So we decided to delay the deployment by a day, and instead went to kill the fort. The last time we went into Pureblind, NC had their supers, so we moved our own this time to see what would happen. Nothing did happen. The fort died. We gated home and we deployed the next.
So what exactly, let's get sort of an overview on the campaign. You guys have gone to Hakonan and are aimed generally at NC. What can you tell us about it? Obviously, it's a campaign in progress. It has just started, and I don't want to get into anything too OPSEC. So what can you tell us about your aims and your plans?
Well, kind of the main aim is to just cause as much disruption as possible. We've been doing the last couple of days quite a lot of bomber, which have been actually quite fun. I haven't done them in a while. We've got a lot of newer FCs and some older FCs as well doing. So it's dropping Rorquals. We got 2 Rorquals, a carrier and a Hell yesterday, I think, under the Titan umbrella. And just hitting structures, causing as much disruption as we
How effective is their Titan? So that's kind of fascinating to me, right? You go up there, you've got bombers, you're actually taking Rorquals out. Recently, Pandemic Horde has been asked to mine in tribute using Rorquals as part of the NC Dot umbrella. What can you tell us about the response time and the effectiveness of that umbrella? And if you're still ganking Rorquals, how is that happening? Is their umbrella not working very well? Or are you using enough numbers to get the ganks before they come in? They've got enough response time with panic modules. Why? How are you making it happen?
We bagged 2 Rorquals. I'll be honest, I wasn't on the first Rorqual fleet. It was PRC who FC'd that. I'm not quite sure how they killed that. I think the guy panicked instantly and then died before help could get to him. The second one was a PL1 in range of SH1. We dropped 150 bombers on it. He panicked. Not quite sure that they dropped a Moloch. I wasn't sure if the Moloch was a fail jump or an intentional jump in. But they didn't. They only brought in the one Moloch, no Faxes or any other Titans. So when the panic ended, the guy obviously still had a sign up. We just decloaked, blapped him, and warped off. But then a couple of hours later, I actually whelped a third of our fleet to their Titan blob. So I mean, yeah, if you get Titans on it, like you guys know, if you get Titans on something or enough Titans, then you're pretty safe. But if you don't get in quick enough, then yeah, it's pretty easy to kill things.
I'm going to be curious to see if they adapt, if there are particular targets that are just not connected. One of the reasons why we're able to do what we do in Delve and in the Southwest in general is having everybody network together and essentially murdering anybody who doesn't figure it out. It's going to be curious to see if you guys, through this campaign, to figure out like whether particular Horde pilots are the ones that are not linked in. What alliance? I haven't looked at the kill mails. What alliance were the Rorquals that you guys successfully ganked in?
I think the first one was the Rate My Ticks, but I'm open to being wrong on that. The second one was a P. And then we actually killed an RMT Hell directly after we killed the Pandemic Legion Rorqual.
Excellent.
Just actually on the Pandemic Horde deploying to tribute, it was actually quite funny because the ping for that came out about a week before we were set to deploy, and that's exactly what we thought, that they were trying to turn tribute into a Delve style region where they could, mine in safety. I wasn't actually here for most of today, but from what I've read on Discord, Tribute and Vale have been completely dead for the last 12, 13 hours. There's no Rorquals anywhere. So
excellent.
That's amazing.
It's working for them,
So, real quick, what's the big deal? Jay Mazes points out that's Vince Draken's personal Moloch. There was a Jackdaw fleet of about 20 that showed up, but obviously 20 is not going to do shit. Also, the Rorqual that you guys killed from PL, he's a notable PL guy. Kith Khan, he's been in PL a long time. He's one of those guys that probably would have called for help instantly. The fact that he still died with panic is a pretty big deal, considering what the range is on it. Oh, here we go.
Here comes the game.
Oh,
We're also about to be going into Cool Kids Club mode here, so subscribers only for chat in a second, and we like to take questions and answer, do Q&As from subs, but we're going to this
he's
toy
dead.
here murdered.
He's already dead. But yep, rip that freighter. Vigilant dropped. None of the VNIs dropped. Oh well, but
that's beautiful. We are now in Cool Kids only mode, guys. So subscribers, please go ahead and ask us questions, and we will.
So,
engage.
Mr. Darkshines, one thing that I noticed, I do a lot of Horde internal work, and one of the things that happened with Horde is right when they deployed the tribute, because they planned on doing a lot of Euro time zone mining and ratting, they set all of their timers, U.S. time zone mining and ratting, they set all their timers in Caval Expanse to away from U.S. time zone to Euro to kind of give a break to their Euro guys or U.S. time zone guys that have been fighting Caval Expanse. But as it was pointed out to me, as soon as you guys hit Tribute, because you're a Euro-dominated group, they immediately panicked and reset all of their timers back to U.S. time zone. And according to K-Color, when you set one timer to U.S. time zone, all of them follow suit. So from what it sounds is like they're trying to avoid you being able to hit their structures. I saw that you guys killed a Sino beacon in Veil of the Silent, which is actually a big deal. But I mean, have you encountered any like timers that you've created, or them trying to avoid you at all? Has that come up at all in your experience yet?
No, I mean we're still kind of getting moved in to Hakonin, so we haven't really been focused so much on creating a bunch of timers yet. The beacon that we killed was because we were waiting on Black Ops to refuel, and there just happened to be a low power beacon in the system where we killed the hell, so we went and killed that while we were waiting.
About how long do you anticipate, like, when you went on this deployment? I don't know if you've announced this. Oh, wow, Final Praetorian, lots of sub-gifts there. Thank you very much.
He's at
one of the questions,
18 now. Holy shit.
How long do you expect this deployment to last? Is there are we talking a month, 2 months? Has anybody said anything about that? I'm just curious.
I'm going to not comment on that one if that's okay.
Excellent.
Oh, perfect. That's fine. Yes. That's perfect.
We know we're asking the right questions on the show if we're told that we can't get the answer because they're OPSEC.
I mean, let's ask this. And this might be OPSEC. But I'm curious about this because you guys you've used your bomber group. You've used the MJD Raven group. What is that going to be like? Say you tackle a Rorqual, you get him to call for help, and then boom, Titans appear. Do you think you could still get in there and kill that Rorqual and get away, or is it one of those things where like once help arrives, you say fuck it, we're going to the next place?
Entirely depends on the situation and what jumps in. Like I got a bit greedy with a Rorqual yesterday. They had landed their Titan fleet on it, and it came out of panic, but it was still in industry mode. And I ended up whelping, I don't know, 50 bombers or something, trying to kill it, and we didn't kill it in the end. So it really depends. Like Ravens, yeah. I mean, like if Panda's in the seat and there's a Raven fleet there, then yeah, I'm pretty much like I'm confident there's nothing he can't kill with it.
Yeah. So
we have a couple of questions here.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I want to take some questions from the cool kids here. So Rockaholic has a question for Aerith, which is, have you recognized any mindset changes from CCP regarding EVE since it's not the Tencent deal, it's with Pearl Abyss, not Tencent? But that's a very good question. Have you seen anything different from CCP from your experience prior to the acquisition to what you saw last week?
Yeah, we definitely have. I don't know that it is necessarily because of Pearl Abyss. But I do believe there's definitely a demeanor change and sort of a focus and enthusiasm change among CCP since the last summit. So that's been very.
When you say focus and enthusiasm change, you mean that they're more engaged, less engaged? Is this a positive thing, a negative thing?
Positive for sure, yeah.
Because that's the thing that everybody is going to be concerned about, of course, is that there's an acquisition, and then morale in the games industry is sort of a notoriously dodgy thing, especially when like ArenaNet has layoffs that are getting pre-announced, and so that's good to know. Curious.
Like a CSM perspective, our general consensus is we do not believe that PA is having any negative impacts upon CCP or EVE at this time at all.
Yeah, I'm not plugged into anything that's NDA'd or anything like that, but while we might be having kind of a post-holiday doldrums as far as like drama in the game goes, this seems to be like a relatively normal cycle. Like I'm not really seeing anything that's making me, from like a Mittani perspective, go, ooh, wow, something's different. It seems to be essentially business as usual as far as CCP goes.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to get into their summer, doldrums here soon, like when everyone goes on vacation. So we need to expect that. I mean, that's Iceland, right? But other than that, I feel like what we're seeing from them is good, and we're seeing, things that make us hopeful for the future. And so I don't really see any issue. And plus, we're in a different period of EVE right now. Like we're in a very unique period among the history of EVE where not since Bob can you say there's been one dominant superpower in EVE. Like it hasn't been the case in 10 years, 9 years, something like that. And it's had inverse effect to what I believe the average EVE player would expect. Like the average EVE player would go, oh my god, Serenity's right around the corner, we're all going to be blue donutted, it's going to kill the game, blah, blah, blah. But what you've actually seen is when everyone knows what the existential threat is, and we're not interested in suppressing the game, then all of a sudden content breaks out among all these smaller entities or less capable entities, let's just say. Within coalitions, they break up. You see that in the north with UGG versus Horde. In the east, where now we're probably going to have new people being seeded into Null. So having one superpower that isn't interested in being a kingmaker like the old Bob or PL may have been in their day means that a lot more content can happen throughout the game without it being suppressed, and that's a good thing. So I feel like a one superpower EVE is actually really cool as long as that superpower is mostly benevolent.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point. It makes a lot more sense what you're saying, and I think that's something that people have missed in the modern nullsec dynamic. It was confusing, and I was myself initially confused as to why our enemies from our Northern War turned on each other and started infighting rather than presenting a united front against us. And I think it really is the fact that over several years now, the Imperium has demonstrated that we are happy with the Galactic Southwest, and that is our zone. You know, all of these planets are yours, attempt no landings in the Galactic Southwest, and then beyond that, kill each other. We don't care. We occasionally deploy. We go places like Initiative is doing. We occasionally go out and blow up a shitload of hostile Titans. But you don't see the kind of fear that has been put into people about the idea of a Bob style, we're totally going to conquer the galaxy with our cheated dev BPOs and all that T20 bullshit, which they will never live down, and their defenders will never live down because we won't let them. But you're right, there isn't an existential threat. There is no, oh, NC Dot is going to try to conquer EVE. There is no, oh, the Imperium is going to try to conquer EVE. People have sort of like their territorial fiefdoms, and that has resulted in a lot more like what I'd call medium scale conflicts breaking out.
Real quick, I just got some information handed to me. This is 100% verified. In Delve, as we all know, when people lose a Rorqual, we'll mock them for not being in comms or not calling for help. But outside that, we don't really give a fuck, right? You lose your Rorqual, who cares? NC Dot, though, has put a bounty on their Rorquals that if a Rorqual dies to Initiative, they owe 1 billion S to the Corp or Alliance, or they're kicked. And the same goes for the rental groups. If they lose a ship to Initiative, they have to pay 1 billion S, or the whole Corp is kicked. According to the Hell Pilot, he has 24 hours to pay the fine, or his Corp is being removed and no longer a renter.
I really, that is something that I've just never understood about the enemy leadership, but particularly when it comes to NC Dot, is, setting up these circular firing squads, or, to call way back to 2006, with firing the red pin over the Alliance, which is what the famous leader of Veritas Immortalis, you can't send these mails around basically blaming the victims. People get ganked. It's war. Shit happens. And if you, as an organization, say that somebody got blown up and then you're going to all actually punish them, as opposed to goons point and laugh, but we don't set up any kind of fine policy of, ooh, you lost, and so we're going to say it's your fault. It's something that consistently destroys morale. It makes people feel that they can't trust their leadership. People follow leaders that they think will keep them safe, that will protect them, that will care for them, that will look after them. But we see this consistent punching downward from Vince Draken and his particular inner circle cohort. I've never understood it. It's lost them a shitload of wars because it means that they can't sustain nearly as well as a cohesive group. It blows my mind that they keep doing this shitty stuff to their line members.
Well, this is a perfect opportunity to segue into, we would be happy to have you as a rental corporation within our new region, period.
I was wondering if we were going to make the announcement, and I guess we are going to make the announcement.
Oh, yeah, boy, I get to rent again.
We are getting to that point now. It is now towards the end of February, so period basis is something that we are going to be opening up as a rental territory. And I'm just going to go ahead and say explicitly what our plan is with this, because the more open we are about our plan, the easier we'll get the word out. We have always had a challenge until NGSA and SIGs and squads really sort of popped up, of projecting power into the drone regions and going after the renter part of our enemies, right? You have NC Dot, they have their renters and all that, and that's something that has been mostly untouchable. But what we're going to do is undercut all of the rates of hostile renters, open up period basis, and then maybe some bad things might be coming for Brothers of Tangra. But, you know, Aerith, would you like to
Tell us, please. Go
tell
ahead.
us a little bit more?
Yeah, so all we're going to do is have a very minimum price to prevent easy AWOXing, right? Not that AWOXing is really a thing anymore, but, you know, just to prevent the easy enroll AWOX get out, you're going to have a minimum fee to join for a corporation or an individual. But beyond that, we're just going to tax you by taxes. We're not going to need monthly fees for rental. You're just going to have to use our infrastructure, right? And since it's so remote, we think of this as sort of not a loss leader, because we're not going to lose ISK or anything, but a essentially crab region exclusively, that anyone that's savvy, that's a renter, that just wants a place to rad, you know, in peace or mine in peace and keep their costs as low as possible. So the very premium renters, the ones that can actually do math and aren't retarded, they are going to want to come to this region and just crab it up. And so we're going to charge a very minimal fee. It's basically nothing. It's kind of an intro fee. And then you're going to be paying through taxation, and then we'll tax your corps much like we do our own corps, where, you know, we tax your refine rates, we tax your ratting, and we have all the infrastructure in place down there to where you're going to be using our infrastructure. We're not going to allow your own, but other than that, you can essentially do whatever you want in that region. Outside of mood mining, we'll have to keep those for us, for our Locust fleet, which, you know, we got to have our Locust fleet fueling 1DQ, but other than that, you're going to have more freedom than any other rental region, and it'll be a density model where you're not going to be limited to a system, and you'll have full run of the region.
We're going to be weaponizing this. This is essentially
Weaponized
like we're setting up a Walmart in period basis. We want to have the cheapest, lowest prices. This is explicitly a loss leader. We are not really doing this to make money for us. We have money from other sources, thanks to our finance team and a whole bunch of work that's gone into that. But the main point of this is it might make us a little bit of money, and that's great. But it's mainly about taking money away from our enemies by undercutting them viciously, just like what Amazon.com does. We were willing to sacrifice profits for market share.
This feels like a great way to use NGSA as a weapon, right? Deploy to a region, have everyone everyone that's camping has their character named a certain way. The description of their character is how to apply to a new rental region.
People of the drone region. You are being lied to. Come to period basis. The water is... Well, I guess there's no water in space.
I want to thank Misa Evil for 47 months of subscriptions. Thank you, sir. That was earlier. And also, we had a question that came up about NGSA. Is how would you compare NGSA to the AFK camping going on by two people in Delve? So that's two guys multi-boxing about 90 accounts. They're not impacting Delve in any way, shape, or form because AFK camping with cloaky campers doesn't work if you have competent people who join fleet and comms and communicate. The reason it works in places like rental regions is until Goon Rental starts, rental regions tend to be limited to a corp with very few systems, and a whole region might have 40 different groups renting it, and they don't communicate at all. So AFK camping is really easy then, right? There's no command and control. So that's why Delve is kind of like they're just wasting a whole lot of ISK to camp nothing, I guess.
Somebody is saying that NC is totally going to come to period basis. It's going to be kind of hard for people to mess with period basis because it is super isolated geographically. They'd have to try to go through Delve, and they have to deal with the initiative burning everything in tribute to the ground. So they can't really take their focus off of home defense, which is a damn shame if bad things started happening in the drone regions while the people who would be defending their drone regions are pinned down defending tribute. Oh, God, that's just so awkward.
That's a question that comes up here is, well, Skill U has its own renters, and they tend to try to take care of those. What happens to the rest of them? Horde just gave up its rental empire in the Cabal Expanse because, well, you can't really use a rental region that's camped by hundreds and hundreds of goons every day. This is interesting. I'm excited to see...
Well, our focus should be on Brothers of Tangra. I mean, there's no reason for us. Initiative has gone to Conan, and Initiative is going to be killing the shit out of everybody in Tribute, and we don't want to mess with that because that's their show. But the timing of it lines up really well with the period basis thing, and then really kind of, one might say, twisting the knife on the renters that would be fueling that everybody can take a shot.
I guess this is good to announce that NGSA has been turned into a combat squad that will have official leadership and structure, and it's not just Boats doing a thing because Boats bored. So it will actually be a thing that you can join and sign up to. And the leader of Sigs and Squads is making that happen in the next few days. So there's another announcement to add to the rental empire.
Good time.
Renting again.
All right. I think last time we did renting, we were actually trying to make money from it as opposed to just weaponizing it. So that'll be kind of...
One thing I took away from that, though, is a couple of major corps in the Imperium now started off as renters and they just realized how great we were and how much potential their corp had, 200, 300, 400 members, and they became something of themselves. And there's a few of those that have happened. So
that's true.
I'm excited.
Service guaranteed citizenship.
Yep.
All right. Well, I want to thank our guests for coming on. We are at the end of the show for this week. Next week, I don't know if I don't think there's going to be a show next week, or maybe there will be one. I just won't be here next week because I'll be in. Yeah, things can continue without me. Thank you all for coming. Dark Shines, thank you very much for coming and telling us about what's happening with the initiative. Joe Painter, thank you very much for telling us about Burning Cheetah. And Aerith, thank you for telling us about the CSM stuff.
Yep. See you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Yep. See you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Go Burn Cheetah more.
You are about to receive messages that may be harmful to your mental state. Your sense of reality will be questioned. Your view on things will be altered. You are now part of the meta. The meta controls everything. The meta determines what will and will not happen.